She married a man in a wheelchair. What he did at the altar left everyone in tears. A chance encounter that changed everything. Naomi Bennett never expected a simple volunteer shift to alter the course of her entire life. It was a crisp October afternoon in Atlanta, the kind where the leaves blushed gold and amber, and the air hinted that fall had truly arrived. Naomi had signed up for weekend community service at a local rehabilitation center, something she often did between her shifts as a pediatric nurse. She loved helping people, especially those trying to rebuild their lives. But on that day, she was tired, emotionally drained from a difficult week at the hospital, and considered skipping. She almost didn't go, but something, maybe intuition, maybe faith, nudged her to show up. And that's when she met Elijah. He sat by the window in the therapy lounge, his wheelchair angled toward the sunlight. The light hit his face just right, illuminating the quiet strength in his features. He was alone, his sketchpad resting on his lap, pencil gliding across the page with such focus that Naomi didn't want to interrupt. But he noticed her anyway. "You can come closer," he said, his voice calm, with a warmth that immediately made her shoulders relax. "I don't bite." Naomi chuckled, approaching slowly. "I've just never seen someone sketch that fast without looking up." Elijah turned the pad toward her. It was a loose drawing of the window, the trees outside, and, to her surprise, her silhouette. The shading was delicate, precise, and somehow alive. "You caught me," he said, smiling. "You walked in like a poem. I had to get it down before the moment passed." Naomi blinked. No one had ever described her like that before. "I'm Naomi," she said, extending her hand. "Elijah," he replied, shaking it gently. "Though my sisters call me Eli when they're feeling affectionate or annoyed." Or that was the beginning. What started as a brief conversation turned into an hour-long dialogue about everything from their favorite childhood books to how much they both loved Motown classics and late-night pancakes. Naomi learned that Elijah had been a professional architect before a devastating car accident a year earlier left him paralyzed from the waist down. A drunk driver had run a red light. His spine had been irreparably damaged. He lost not just his mobility, but the career he'd spent his life building, but not his spirit. "That chair doesn't define me," he said, tapping one of the wheels. "It's just how I get around, but my mind, my hands, those still work just fine." Naomi found herself drawn to his confidence, not arrogance, but something deeper. A quiet belief that life was still worth living, even if it looked different now. They met again the next weekend, and the weekend after that. Soon, she found herself bringing him coffee without being asked. He sketched while she read out loud to him from her favorite childhood stories. They laughed, a lot. She marveled at how he found humor in the hard moments, like when he joked about needing a license for how fast he could maneuver his wheelchair. What she didn't expect was how often she caught herself thinking about him long after she left the center. One Saturday, as she helped him out to the garden courtyard, Naomi paused. "Do you ever wish things were different?" Elijah stopped moving. The wind rustled the trees around them. "Every single day," he said. "But I also thank God that I'm still here to wish." That night, Naomi couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, replaying the day, remembering his words, his smile, the way he listened when she talked as if every syllable mattered. She was falling, and fast, but she was also afraid, not of what people would say, though she knew they would say plenty. Not of the stares or whispers that came when people saw a young woman with a man in a wheelchair. What scared her was that she hadn't felt this kind of connection, ever. Naomi had dated before, a few boyfriends, a handful of almosts. But with Elijah, it wasn't just about chemistry. It was about feeling seen, known, safe. She didn't know if he felt the same, until one rainy afternoon changed everything. Elijah had been unusually quiet that day. Their sessions in the courtyard had become routine: coffee, conversation, and sketching. But this time, he wheeled out with a little box in his lap. "Before you say anything," he said nervously, "this isn't what it looks like." Naomi blinked. "Okay." He handed her the box. Inside was a drawing, a sketch of Naomi laughing, holding a cup of coffee, her head tilted slightly like she always did when she listened. The details were stunning, but it was the caption that caught her breath. "You're the light in my darkest chapter." Naomi looked up, tears brimming. "I don't know what this is between us," Elijah continued, "but I know you've brought me back to life in a way I didn't think possible." Naomi took a deep breath. "You're not alone, Elijah. I feel it too." That was the moment that two souls, one with scars you could see and one with scars you couldn't, began something real. In the weeks that followed, Naomi and Elijah's relationship blossomed. Their families were surprised, some hesitant, but not unkind. Naomi's parents worried about what the future would look like, but they saw how happy she was. Elijah's sisters, fierce and protective, questioned whether Naomi understood what it meant to be with someone in a wheelchair, not out of cruelty, but out of love. "She's the first person who never looked at me with pity," Elijah told his sister Maya. "She just sees me." And Naomi? She saw more than just Elijah's condition. She saw his resilience, his humor, his gentle way of caring for people, even when he was the one needing care. They took things slow, dated, laughed, fought, and made up. He showed her how to navigate the world from a different perspective, and she showed him that love had nothing to do with walking and everything to do with showing up. One night, while slow dancing in their living room, Naomi guiding Elijah's hands as they moved to the rhythm, he whispered, "You make me feel whole again." Naomi smiled. "You were never broken, but love stories, no matter how sweet, are never without complications." As their relationship grew deeper, so did the conversations. Could Elijah ever walk again? Would he ever dance at their wedding? What about children? How would they build a life that accommodated both their realities? Some questions had answers, others didn't. But through it all, they stayed rooted in one truth. They wanted to face it together. And then came the moment neither of them expected, a proposal that wasn't about grand gestures, but about shared life. One quiet evening, as Naomi finished her shift and returned home to find the lights dimmed and candles glowing, Elijah wheeled toward her, holding a small box in his hand. "No kneeling," he joked, "unless you want to help me back up." Naomi laughed through tears. He opened the box. Inside was a ring set in a simple band, the stone small but sparkling. "It's not about how big the diamond is," he said. "It's about what it means. Will you marry me, Naomi? Will you build a life with me, wheelchair and all?" Naomi dropped to her knees, not because he couldn't, but because she wanted to. "Yes," she whispered, 1,000 times yes. As the news of their engagement spread, so did the opinions. Strangers online had plenty to say. Some called it brave. Others questioned her motives. Some called him lucky to find someone willing to love him. But Naomi never flinched. She posted a single message. He doesn't need to walk to be the man of my dreams. He just needed to roll into my life at the right time. And Elijah? He had his own plan. Something he hadn't told anyone. Not even Naomi. Because while she was planning a wedding, he was planning a miracle. Love that rebuilds. The secret training begins. Elijah Cooper had always believed in setting goals, even after the accident, especially after the accident. Back when he was an architect, every project started with blueprints, vision, a plan. He'd approach recovery with the same mindset. But this, what he was now secretly planning, this was something entirely different. It wasn't just about standing. It was about standing for love. 3 weeks after the proposal, Naomi had already dived into wedding planning. Between her hospital shifts and bridesmaid Zoom calls, she barely had time to notice Elijah's growing restlessness. But he noticed it. Every time she brought up their first dance, his stomach twisted. He'd nod, smile, offer a light joke. But inside, he wrestled with something deeper, a longing to give her a moment neither of them would ever forget. "I want to stand," he confessed quietly to Dr. Wells, his physical therapist, during one of their regular sessions. The therapist raised an eyebrow. "You're already doing so well. Transfers are stronger, upper body's solid, but standing? On your own? I don't want to just stand. I want to stand at the altar. I want to dance with Naomi on our wedding day." Dr. Wells folded her arms. "You understand that's impossible?" Elijah cut her off. "You told me that word doesn't belong in this room." She smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." And so, the secret project began. Elijah's regular therapy appointments quietly doubled. He told Naomi he was doing more consultations for his new freelance architectural work. She believed him. Mostly. It wasn't hard to lie, not because he wanted to, but because he wanted the surprise to be perfect. "I want to see her face when she realizes what love has pushed me to do," Elijah said to Dr. Wells one afternoon as he practiced shifting weight between his legs using the parallel bars. "I want to give her a moment she never dreamed possible." And so, with the help of a dedicated therapy team, Elijah began pushing his limits, slowly, painfully, but with unshakable resolve. Meanwhile, Naomi continued piecing together their wedding day. Yellow and white roses, gospel choir, peach cobbler for dessert, a playlist filled with Stevie Wonder, Lauryn Hill, and just a hint of Marvin Gaye. Their wedding would be intimate. Close friends, family, colleagues, and a few of Elijah's former students who had insisted on performing a special musical number. But even as the details came together, Naomi couldn't shake a feeling, a sense that something was shifting. One night, while folding laundry, she noticed Elijah wincing as he stretched his arms. "Another long day of designing buildings?" she teased. "Yeah," he said, not meeting her eyes. "Got a big project with a tight deadline." She leaned in and kissed his temple. "Just don't forget to rest, Mr. Cooper. I want you fresh and fabulous at the altar." "I'm planning on it," he said, smiling to himself. Every night, after Naomi went to bed, Elijah would pull out his journal and write, "Day 17 of the plan. Pushed for 10 seconds unassisted. Still shaky. Legs feel like wet noodles. But I didn't fall today. Progress. Naomi has no idea. I hope I can do this. I hope I can stand for her. I hope..." He never finished that sentence. One afternoon, Dr. Wells brought in a new device. a harness-based support frame. This might help train your body to relearn verticality, she said, adjusting the straps. Elijah grunted through the straps, teeth clenched as sweat pooled on his brow. How's the pain? She asked. Worth it. Balance? Wobbly, like a newborn giraffe. She chuckled. You're stubborn. He looked up, breathless but smiling. I'm in love. Word of Elijah's secret mission spread quietly among those he trusted. His sister Patrice, Naomi's youngest sister Kiara, who had stumbled upon one of his therapy sessions, and even Naomi's coworker Mary, who had sworn to keep the secret. Do you think she'll cry? Elijah asked Mary one day after a grueling stretch session. She won't just cry, Mary said. She'll fall in love with you all over again. But it wasn't all smooth. 2 weeks before the wedding, Elijah suffered a minor setback. A strain in his lower back forced him to rest for 3 days. Frustrated, he feared he was pushing too far, too fast. What if I fail? He asked Dr. Wells. What if I collapse halfway down the aisle? Then you get up, she said firmly. Because love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up. You've already won. Meanwhile, Naomi sat in the kitchen one night, browsing through their engagement photos. Elijah looked happy, healthy, and yet she couldn't shake the feeling he was holding something back. She didn't doubt his love. She just sensed a secret. She thought about asking, but something told her to wait. The night before the wedding, Elijah wheeled himself onto the back patio where Naomi stood, barefoot in her robe, staring up at the stars. You okay? He asked. She turned to him and smiled. I'm marrying my best friend tomorrow. I think I'm okay. He rolled closer, took her hand. Can I ask you something? He said, serious now. Of course. If I never walk, if I never dance again, if this chair is forever, are you still all in? Naomi knelt down so they were eye to eye. I didn't fall in love with your legs, Elijah. I fell in love with your soul. And that's more than enough. He swallowed hard, emotion swelling. Just remember that tomorrow, he whispered. Later that night, he opened his journal again. Day 42 of the plan. Tomorrow is the day. I've done all I can. I'm ready, even if I only stand for 10 seconds. She deserves that moment. She deserves everything. Whispers and worries. The bride starts to wonder. There's something about wedding planning that makes time move differently. Some days fly by in a joyful blur. Others stretch endlessly, filled with last-minute emails, dress fittings, and calls to stubborn vendors. For Naomi, the final 2 weeks before her wedding were a mix of both, exhilarating and unsettling. It wasn't just the pressure of the big day. It was Elijah. Something had shifted. He still smiled, still held her hand tightly when they walked through fabric stores or chose invitations, still made her laugh with ridiculous dance move impressions from his chair. But he was tired, too tired, and he was hiding it. Naomi noticed the smallest things first. He canceled a dinner with her parents, something he'd been excited about. He said he was too busy with freelance projects. But when she peeked at his computer later that night, no new blueprints were open. He'd left the screen on a YouTube video about wedding choreography. She didn't mention it, just filed it away. Then there were the phone calls. Quick, whispered conversations with his sister Patrice. Messages he'd delete as soon as they came in. And the strange moment she walked into the living room to find Elijah quickly hiding a notebook under a blanket. Elijah, she said, arms crossed. What's going on? Nothing, he said quickly. Too quickly. Just sketching ideas for a wedding surprise. Her suspicion deepened, but so did her curiosity. One night, Naomi came home late from a double shift at the hospital. The apartment was dark, except for a single lamp in Elijah's office. She tiptoed to the door and peeked inside. There he was, drenched in sweat, gripping two metal bars set up in the center of the room. Parallel bars. She watched as he strained to pull himself upright. His arms trembled, his back hunched forward, but he didn't give up. She saw pain, but she also saw fire. She stepped back before he could see her and quietly walked to the bedroom, tears welling in her eyes. He was training. For her. The next morning at breakfast, Naomi poured him coffee and smiled. No questions. No accusations. But she couldn't help herself from asking one thing. Elijah, are you scared? He looked up from his eggs, confused. Scared of what? Of the wedding, of the future, of what comes next. He paused, then answered honestly. Not scared of the future. I'm scared I won't be able to give you the moment you deserve. Naomi leaned across the table and took his hand. Elijah Cooper, the only thing I need from you on that day is you. But even as she said it, her heart beat faster, because deep down, she knew something bigger was coming, something he wouldn't or couldn't say out loud. That afternoon, she called Kiara, her little sister. Ki, I think Elijah is hiding something from me. There was silence on the line. Naomi, Kiara said slowly. What if it's not hiding? What if it's a gift? In the making? A gift? Naomi asked. Kiara's voice softened. You've loved Elijah through things most people would have run from. He knows that, and he's trying to show you what that love has made possible. Naomi blinked back tears. I don't need a miracle. I just need him. I think he knows that, Kiara said. But maybe he needs to prove it to himself. The wedding countdown hit 10 days, and then 7. And still, Naomi noticed the changes. Elijah's physical therapist, Dr. Wells, began showing up at odd hours. She dropped off equipment, whispered to Patrice when she thought Naomi wasn't looking. One night, Naomi overheard them in the hallway. Patrice. He's pushing too hard. Dr. Wells. He says it's worth it. Naomi didn't sleep that night. 3 days before the wedding, Naomi walked into her old bedroom, the one she'd be staying in the night before the ceremony. On her pillow was a note in Elijah's handwriting. Naomi, if I seem distant, please know it's not because I'm pulling away. It's because I'm preparing, not just for our wedding, but for something I've been dreaming about since the moment you said yes. You'll understand soon, I promise. She read the note 3 times, then hugged it to her chest and cried. The final 2 days before the wedding passed like waves, emotion crashing in, love holding her afloat. Naomi's mother baked enough cornbread for 50 guests. Her father practiced his speech while pretending not to cry in the garage. Kiara helped her steam her wedding dress, the ivory silk glowing in the morning light. But Naomi, she moved through it all like someone holding her breath, waiting, watching, wondering. Then, the night before the wedding, Elijah called. Hey, he said. You ready? Naomi smiled, tears already threatening to spill. I don't think I'll ever be ready, she whispered. You don't have to be. Just walk toward me tomorrow, and I'll be there. His voice cracked slightly. Elijah, yeah? I love you. With everything. Whether you're standing, sitting, dancing, or just holding my hand. I know, he said, voice thick with emotion. But still, I hope I make you proud tomorrow. You already do. That night, Naomi lay in bed, unable to sleep. The wind whispered through the trees outside. Somewhere downstairs, her mother hummed a hymn softly. The house, filled with family, felt alive, buzzing with anticipation. But Naomi stayed still, because the man she loved had something planned. And tomorrow, she'd finally see what it was. The weight he carried. How Elijah prepared to stand for love. Elijah Cooper had always been a quiet fighter, not the kind that needed applause or trophies. He didn't chase recognition. He chased hope. But after the accident, the crash that left him paralyzed from the waist down, hope wasn't easy to find. For the first year, Elijah didn't speak much at all. The once vibrant music teacher, who made entire classrooms come alive with rhythm, now spent his days in a silent room, counting ceiling tiles. Until Naomi. She didn't walk into his life with grand speeches or empty optimism. She walked in with steady eyes, warm hands, and a voice that said, "You matter." And slowly, Elijah began to believe that maybe, just maybe, he still had something worth fighting for. It was 2 weeks after their engagement, in the quiet of a hospital hallway, that Elijah first asked the question, "Do you think I could ever stand again?" Dr. Wells, his physical therapist, looked up from her clipboard, surprised. "You mean medically or emotionally?" "Both," he said, almost shyly. "Naomi says she doesn't care, but I want to try. Not because she needs me to, because I need me to." That night, Elijah began keeping a journal, not for anyone else, just for himself. Each entry, a snapshot of pain, of progress, of purpose. Day 1, couldn't even sit up straight without help. Felt weak, angry. But I told Naomi I was just tired. Day 7, first day back in the harness. Legs felt like cinder blocks, but Wells said I held 15 seconds without buckling. Day 13, Naomi caught me watching our kitchen dance video again. Said I looked lost in thought. I wanted to tell her I was trying to remember how it felt to move, to lead, but I just said, "I miss your cooking." The work was brutal. Elijah woke up at 5 a.m. every other day for early therapy sessions Naomi didn't know about. They used a private gym on the south side of Atlanta. No one there recognized him. That was the point. He didn't want pity. He wanted sweat, failure, and the raw honesty of pushing past the limits his body had set for him. Some days he screamed in frustration. Other days he wept from exhaustion. But every time he felt like quitting, he'd pull out his phone and replay Naomi's laugh from a voicemail she once left him. That laugh had carried him through more than she would ever know. Dr. Wells documented everything. She charted his leg tremors, measured how long he could bear weight, tracked every second he held his frame upright. But what she couldn't measure was the reason Elijah kept coming back. That reason wore curly braids, smelled like lavender and lemon, and looked at him like he was the only man on earth. One evening, as the sun was setting behind the rehab center, Elijah stood between the parallel bars, arms shaking, sweat soaking through his shirt. He'd been at it for 90 minutes. 3 steps forward, collapse, start again. Dr. Wells watched quietly, then finally said, "Elijah, why today? What's driving you so hard?" He looked up, eyes shining. "It's her father's birthday dinner tonight. First time I'm meeting the whole family. I want to at least stand when I shake his hand." That night, Elijah surprised everyone. He transferred into a chair at the head of the table and, with a smile, said, "Mr. Richardson, may I?" Then, gripping the edge of the dining room table for balance, he stood, just for a moment, but it was enough to bring Naomi's father to tears. No one noticed Elijah's knuckles turning white from strain, or how he barely slept that night from the pain. What they remembered was the way Naomi looked at him, like he'd just moved a mountain. And maybe he had. Over the next few months, Elijah kept pushing. He worked with resistance bands, practiced strengthening his core, watched videos of dancers, studied posture, balance, breath control. Naomi thought he was just watching YouTube tutorials to pass time. She had no idea he was training for her. Day 41. Stood for 25 seconds today. Doc says my knees buckled, but I'm counting it anyway. I could see it, her face, at the altar. I want that view. Just once. Day 57. Fell hard today. Busted my elbow. Dr. Wells said maybe I'm pushing too fast. Maybe I am. But every time I close my eyes, I see her in that dress, and I need to meet her halfway. The night before the wedding, Elijah couldn't sleep. He sat by the window, staring out at the moon. His mother came in, wrapped a quilt around his shoulders. "You nervous about the vows?" she asked. "No," Elijah replied quietly. "I'm nervous I won't make it through the surprise." She smiled. "Then let me remind you of something." She pulled out a photo album, opened to a page from Elijah's high school days. Him holding a trombone, grinning wide, standing tall. "You've always had strength in you," she whispered. "Even when you're sitting, you're standing taller than most men ever will." He kissed her cheek. "I just want to give Naomi the best of me." "You already are," she said, holding his hand. "But go ahead and blow her mind anyway." So when Elijah stood at the altar, it wasn't just a medical miracle. It was the climax of pain, love, sacrifice, belief. It was the echo of every late-night whisper he told himself. Just one more try. She's worth it. Don't quit now. He didn't just stand for Naomi. He stood for everyone who's ever felt broken and unlovable. He stood for everyone told to accept their limits. He stood for love, not as a fairy tale, but as a choice made every single day. And in that moment, when he looked her in the eyes, knees shaking, heart wide open, he wasn't a man in a wheelchair. He was her hero. The vows that shook the church. The entire church held its breath. Elijah Cooper, the man everyone had watched roll into the ceremony, now stood tall, albeit shakily, at the altar. His eyes locked on the woman he loved. His trembling legs bore more than just his weight. They carried the memory of every failure, every moment of doubt, every early morning and painful night that led to this second. And now it was time. The pastor stepped forward, his voice soft but steady. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness something not only sacred, but miraculous." As he looked between Elijah and Naomi, the pastor smiled with reverence. "This isn't just a union of two people. It's a testament to faith, in each other, and in the power of love." Then he turned to Elijah, who was visibly shaking but determined. "Do you, Elijah Matthew Cooper, take Naomi Elise Richardson to be your lawfully wedded wife, to love her, honor her, stand beside her in sickness and in health, in struggle and in triumph, from this day forward?" Elijah took a breath. His voice wavered, but rang clear through the quiet sanctuary. I do. But then he didn't stop. He tightened his grip on Naomi's hands and took a small step forward. I need to say more, he whispered to the pastor, who gave him a small nod. Turning fully toward Naomi, Elijah began. Naomi, I came into your life broken, not just in body, but in spirit. I didn't believe I could be a whole man again. I didn't know if I could ever be someone worthy of the kind of love you gave me so freely. The congregation leaned forward, not daring to breathe. You saw past my wheelchair, past my scars. You looked into my soul and reminded me that I was still capable of giving, of growing, of standing. Tears welled in Naomi's eyes as Elijah continued, voice thick with emotion. You loved me when I couldn't stand, and so today I'm standing for you, for us, for every moment we dreamed of and every moment we will live. He pulled a folded paper from his pocket, slightly wrinkled, a little damp. My real vows, he said, smiling through his tears. I've been writing these for months. I vow to never forget what it felt like to sit beside you the first time you touched my hand. I vow to never let a day go by without reminding you how deeply I love you. I vow to rise, even when it hurts, because your love gives me strength. I vow to laugh with you, cry with you, grow with you. And when I can no longer walk, I will always find my way to you, even if I have to crawl, even if it's only in spirit, because where you are is where I belong, always. By the time he finished, the church was silent, not because they weren't moved, but because not a single person could find words. Naomi stepped closer, wiping her tears with the edge of her veil. Elijah Cooper, she said, her voice cracking, you once told me that love was the only thing left you could give. She reached up, cupped his cheek gently. But you've given me everything. I vow to be your joy on dark days, your strength when your knees fail, your voice when you feel unheard. I vow to celebrate your wins, whether it's one step or one breath at a time. I vow to never stop dancing with you, even if all we can do is sway in each other's arms. And I vow, with everything I am, to love you, just as you are, standing, sitting, always. The pastor wiped his eyes, and so did most of the front row. He looked out at the crowd, then back at the couple. If this isn't love, then I don't know what is. He turned again to Elijah. You may kiss your bride. Elijah leaned in slowly, carefully. Naomi met him halfway. As their lips met, the church erupted. Applause, whistles, cheers. People leapt to their feet. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. It was more than a kiss. It was a declaration that love could triumph over limitation. That commitment went beyond what the world could see. After the kiss, Elijah sat gently back into his wheelchair, the effort of standing taking its toll. But his eyes still sparkled, not with exhaustion, but with peace. As they turned to face the crowd, hand in hand, the sunlight caught the stained glass windows behind them, casting a kaleidoscope of colors over their faces. A symbolic blessing, if ever there was one. Guests poured out of the church, still in awe. Former students hugged Naomi. Elderly family members whispered, "That was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." One little boy in a wheelchair approached Elijah with wide eyes. "Does this mean I can stand one day too?" Elijah reached down, touched his shoulder gently. "It means you can do whatever you believe in, if you have the right people by your side." But the day wasn't over yet, because while the vows may have shaken the church, the first dance would leave them speechless. The dance that stopped time. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the reception hall, guests settled into their seats, anticipation buzzing in the air. The ceremony had been nothing short of miraculous, with Elijah's unexpected stand at the altar, leaving not a single eye dry. Yet the evening held another moment poised to etch itself into the hearts of all present. The reception hall was a vision of elegance. Chandeliers draped with delicate wisteria hung from the ceiling, casting soft shadows over tables adorned with ivory linens and centerpieces of lavender and baby's breath. At the heart of the room lay the dance floor, polished to a mirror-like sheen, reflecting the twinkling fairy lights that cascaded from above. A hush fell over the crowd as the master of ceremonies took to the stage, microphone in hand. His voice, warm and inviting, resonated through the hall. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "if the ceremony taught us anything, it's that love knows no bounds. And now, it is my honor to invite our newlyweds, Elijah and Naomi, to share their first dance as husband and wife." Seated at the head table, Elijah took a steadying breath. The weight of the day, both emotionally and physically, pressed upon him. Months of grueling therapy, moments of doubt, and the unwavering support of Naomi had led to this instant. He turned to her, eyes searching. "Shall we?" he murmured, a hint of vulnerability lacing his words. Naomi's hand found his, her touch grounding. "Together," she affirmed, her smile a beacon of encouragement. With deliberate movements, Elijah maneuvered his wheelchair away from the table. The room's attention was riveted on them, a collective breath held in anticipation. Naomi walked beside him, their hands intertwined, a silent testament to their unity. Reaching the center of the dance floor, Elijah positioned his chair, locking the wheels. The music, a soft piano rendition of their favorite song, began to play, its melody weaving through the air like a gentle caress. Drawing strength from an unseen reservoir, Elijah placed his hands on the armrests. The room seemed to contract, all focus narrowing to this singular act. Muscles, once deemed unresponsive, now obeyed his command. With a determination forged in love and perseverance, he lifted himself, rising to his full height. A collective gasp echoed through the hall, followed by an almost sacred silence. Naomi's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, pride and love radiating from her. Elijah extended a hand toward Naomi, an unspoken invitation. She stepped into his embrace, her arms encircling him with a tenderness that spoke of shared trials and triumphs. They began to sway, a gentle rhythm dictated not by the music, but by the cadence of their hearts. Each step, though measured and cautious, was a victory. The world outside the dance floor faded, leaving just the two of them in a universe of their own making. For the guests, time seemed to stand still. The dance transcended mere movement. It was a narrative of resilience, of a love that had weathered storms and emerged unbroken. Mothers clutched tissues to their faces, fathers nodded in silent respect, and friends exchanged glances that spoke volumes. In that dance, Elijah and Naomi conveyed what words could not. It was a testament to promises kept, to battles fought side by side, and to a future embraced with open hearts. As the song reached its crescendo, Elijah's strength began to wane. A tremor coursed through his legs, a reminder of the journey yet ahead. Sensing this, Naomi tightened her hold, her support unwavering. "You've got me," she whispered, her breath a warm reassurance against his cheek. Elijah nodded, gratitude flooding through him. "Always," he replied, the single word encapsulating a vow renewed with each beat of their hearts. The final notes of the song lingered in the air as Elijah guided Naomi into a gentle dip. Applause erupted, a thunderous ovation that resonated off the walls, filling every corner of the hall. Strangers and loved ones alike rose to their feet, united in awe and admiration. Elijah eased back into his wheelchair, exhaustion evident but overshadowed by the elation coursing through him. Naomi knelt beside him, their foreheads touching. "We did it," she breathed, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. Elijah cupped her face, his thumb brushing away the tear. "Together," he echoed, sealing the word with a kiss that spoke of countless tomorrows. As the evening unfolded, the dance remained the centerpiece of conversation. It wasn't just about the physical act, but the embodiment of a love that refused to be confined by circumstance. Elijah and Naomi's story became a beacon, illuminating the boundless possibilities that arise when two souls commit wholly to one another. But as the night drew to a close, another chapter awaited, one that promised new horizons and adventures yet to be written. The honeymoon surprise that no one saw coming. After all the applause, all the tears, all the unforgettable moments of their wedding day, Naomi and Elijah finally boarded their flight the next morning. Destination: an undisclosed tropical paradise Elijah had planned months in advance. Naomi didn't even know the name of the place. Elijah had insisted she trust him. "Just pack light," he'd whispered into her ear that morning. "I've got everything else." And so she did. The plane touched down just after sunset. As the cabin doors opened, warm ocean air greeted them, like an old friend, scented with salt and flowers. A private car was waiting, complete with a soft-spoken driver, holding a sign that read, simply, "Mr. and Mrs. Bennett." Naomi giggled. She still wasn't used to hearing her new last name. The drive took them along winding coastal roads, the sea glittering under a crescent moon. Eventually, the car pulled up to a quiet villa tucked among palm trees. String lights twinkled along the roof, and gentle music played in the background. It was serene, isolated, magical. Inside the villa, fresh hibiscus flowers waited on the pillows, and a note on the bed, written in Elijah's handwriting, read, "This place is yours now, yours to rest, yours to dream, yours to be reminded how deeply you're loved." Naomi stood in the middle of the room, stunned. Elijah wheeled up behind her and rested his hand on her waist. "I wanted our first days as husband and wife to feel like a dream," he said softly. Naomi turned and kissed him, unable to speak. She was already overwhelmed, and yet the surprises had just begun. The next morning, Elijah woke up before Naomi and ordered room service. Her favorite breakfast: banana pancakes with maple syrup, a fresh coconut smoothie, and a note on the tray that said, "To the queen of my mornings, today we walk on sunshine." He wasn't kidding. A beach wheelchair had been delivered the night before, outfitted with wide wheels to roll smoothly over the sand. Elijah had coordinated it all: the equipment, the beach access, even the special path the resort staff had made to lead him right to the water's edge. Naomi cried when she saw it. They spent the morning on the shore, Elijah's hand in hers, their legs stretched out toward the sea, letting the tide kiss their toes. She rested her head on his shoulder as seagulls called overhead and the waves sang their timeless lullaby. I used to dream of doing this one day, Elijah said, breaking the silence. Not just the beach, but sharing it with someone who sees me, all of me, and loves me anyway. Naomi tightened her grip on his hand. I don't just see you, Elijah. I believe in you. That night, Elijah had arranged a private candlelit dinner on the beach, complete with string lights hanging between two palm trees and a violinist playing soft jazz just a few feet away. The sun dipped below the horizon as they ate. Naomi looked around in wonder. How did you pull all this off? She asked. Elijah just smiled. I had help and a lot of determination. When dessert arrived, chocolate mousse with edible flowers, Naomi found a small envelope under her plate. Inside was a single note that said, "Pick a country, any country." She looked up, confused. Elijah grinned. I want us to see the world, Naomi, one place at a time. I've been saving for 2 years. Every bonus, every freelance gig, every weekend I worked overtime. It was all so I could do this. He pulled out a slim, leather-bound folder. Inside were plane tickets to Greece, Japan, Costa Rica, South Africa, and an itinerary for each, carefully planned with accessibility in mind. We'll go wherever your heart takes us, he said, his voice cracking, because you've taken mine further than I ever thought it could go. Naomi burst into tears. Elijah, she whispered, clutching the folder to her chest. This is more than I ever dreamed. Later that night, as the stars blanketed the sky and the last of the embers from their beach bonfire faded, Elijah wheeled over with something wrapped in linen. Okay, he said, nervous now. This one's special. Naomi opened it carefully. It was a book, a handmade journal, bound in navy blue cloth and embroidered with golden thread. On the front, it read, Us, from the first hello to forever. She opened the first page and gasped. It was a photo, a grainy selfie from their first physical therapy session, both of them laughing. Below it, Elijah had written, The moment that changed everything. Page after page, Naomi found photographs, ticket stubs, scribbled memories in Elijah's handwriting, a Polaroid from their first dinner, a napkin with a heart drawn in coffee from the cafe they frequented, a sticky note that read, Remember when we slow danced in the kitchen and the world disappeared? There were messages hidden inside too, small folded notes that read things like, You smiled at me today, and I swear, my whole world stood still. The way you looked at me in the rain, that's when I knew. Even on the hard days, you are my soft place. Naomi clutched the book to her chest. You remembered everything. Elijah looked at her, his eyes shimmering. I wasn't just falling in love with you. I was collecting moments to remind you, one day, how much you've changed my life. They sat in silence then, just holding each other, the journal between them, the story of their love, handwritten by the man who had once believed he might never be seen for who he truly was. Naomi kissed him softly. This is the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. On the final day of their honeymoon, Elijah had just one more surprise. As the resort staff gathered to send them off with lees and cheers, a man walked toward them, an older gentleman with a gentle smile and a guitar slung over his back. Elijah? Naomi asked. Elijah grinned. This is Marcus. He was my music teacher when I was a kid. Flew him out here for this. Marcus nodded and took his seat. As the staff and guests stepped back, he strummed the opening chords of Stand By Me. Says, and as the music played, Elijah slowly rose from his wheelchair, unassisted this time, and took Naomi's hand. I've been practicing, he whispered. Together, they danced, right there on the sand, barefoot and smiling, surrounded by people clapping and crying, their shadows stretching long across the beach. It wasn't perfect. Elijah's steps were slow. He stumbled once. Naomi steadied him, and they laughed. But it was theirs. And in that moment, under the golden light of a setting sun and the hush of the waves, Naomi understood the greatest surprise of all. Not the trip, not the journal, not even the dancing, but the way Elijah had always chosen love, not as a grand gesture, but as a daily decision, a series of small, quiet sacrifices that, together, made something extraordinary. That night, as they lay curled up in a hammock beneath the stars, Naomi whispered, Elijah, what if one day life gets harder again? What if the wheels come back? The pain returns? He kissed the top of her head and replied, then we roll again, side by side, because love isn't about never falling. It's about never falling alone. Naomi smiled, and for the first time in her life, she didn't wonder about the future. She didn't fear it, because she knew, no matter where they went, what happened, or how hard life got, they would face it together. Some love stories are made of roses and rings. Others are made of quiet courage and broken wheels. But the ones that last, they're built on truth, sacrifice, and the belief that miracles don't always come loud. Sometimes they come in whispers, and sometimes they dance. Sometimes the most extraordinary love stories don't begin with fireworks or grand declarations. Sometimes they begin in a hospital hallway, with a woman in colorful scrubs and a man in a wheelchair, exchanging nothing more than a smile. Naomi and Elijah's story wasn't written in perfect pages. It was scribbled through scars, setbacks, whispered hopes, and silent resilience. And yet, somehow, those imperfect lines told a story more powerful than any fairy tale. What made their journey remarkable wasn't Elijah's strength alone, nor was it Naomi's compassion. It was the way they saw each other, fully, truthfully, even when the world tried to make them look away. It was the way Elijah, despite every limitation his body placed on him, kept finding ways to rise, for Naomi, and for the love he believed they both deserved. It was the way Naomi, despite knowing how hard the path would be, never once hesitated to walk it with him, barefoot, hand in hand, against the grain of judgment, expectation, and doubt. So what can we take from their story? Perhaps first and foremost, love is not defined by ability, appearance, or circumstance, but by intention. Elijah could have let the accident define him. He could have let the wheelchair become a permanent wall between him and a future. But he didn't. Instead, he turned his pain into purpose. He turned therapy sessions into training for a miracle. He turned limitations into motivation. Not because he had to impress Naomi, but because he wanted her to see the man he had become. Not in spite of his struggles, but because of how he'd grown through them. And Naomi, she saw it. From the very beginning, she didn't see Elijah's chair. She saw his heart. She saw a man who made her laugh, who listened deeply, who brought light even in his own moments of darkness. She saw someone who was worth fighting for, and she fought, not just alongside him, but sometimes ahead of him, holding space until he caught up. That's the second lesson. Real love doesn't rescue, it reveals. It reveals who we are at our core. It asks us to show up as we are, broken, healing, unfinished, and still say, I'm here and I choose you. Through their journey, we saw love that wasn't loud, but steady. Love that didn't promise perfection, but progress. Love that danced, even when the music was slow and the steps were shaky. And oh, that dance. That moment on the wedding day when Elijah stood, when the church fell silent, and all you could hear was the sound of effort, courage, and heart pounding in unison. It was never about proving anything to the world. It was always about showing Naomi that he could rise with her, for her. It was a vow spoken not just in words, but in motion, in the trembling of his legs, in the strength it took to step forward, in the grace of a man who refused to let a diagnosis steal his dream. And when he danced, oh, how he danced, not just with his feet, but with his soul. Their honeymoon was more than a destination. It was a declaration. Each surprise Elijah prepared, from the heartfelt message in the sand, to the scrapbook of their journey, to the whispered promise of a life where they'd chase the horizon together, reminded us of one truth. Love doesn't stop growing just because the vows are done. It deepens. It expands. It shows up in the smallest details. A breakfast on the balcony, a walk by the sea, a shared sunset after a long day of exploring. And that leads us to perhaps the most powerful truth of all. Love, when nurtured, creates miracles. Not always dramatic, not always viral, but quiet, personal, and profound. A miracle is when someone sees your scars and doesn't flinch, when someone stands by you, literally and figuratively, when the world says you may never stand again, when someone writes your name next to the word forever and means it. If this story touched your heart the way it touched ours, if you believe, like Naomi and Elijah, that love can break barriers, rewrite destinies, and carry us through the storms, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who might need a little hope today. And tell us in the comments, what's the most beautiful act of love you've ever witnessed? We read every message, and your stories inspire us to keep telling more like this. Because here on Wow Family Story, love always finds a way. And sometimes, the most unexpected love stories are the ones that stay with us forever.